we'll live with you too. As I was preparing to move into my new home, which I bought under my name, my mother-in-law suddenly barged in and said something outrageous. I had endured endless harassment from her, and whenever I visited my in-laws' house, I was made to work like a horse. My father-in-law, while not doing anything himself, never stopped her and seemed to be riding along with her behavior. Probably, they intended to live with me and make me do all the work. Determined not to let that happen, I decided to share a shocking truth with my in-laws. What? I'm single, though. What? As I was single, my parents-in-law became flustered but continued to insult me. A certain person, witnessing this, became even more furious. I am Kim, 33 years old. I work as an ordinary employee at a major company. My husband also works at the same company, and we have been married for 2 years. We met at a company drinking party, and it seems he fell in love with me at first sight. He asked around the company to find out which department I belonged to, and then approached me vigorously. At first, I thought, what's with this guy? But seeing him come to meet me every day and invite me to meals, I thought it might be safe and fun to be with someone who pursues one so persistently. So I accepted his proposal. After about 2 years of dating, we had a successful marriage. We were supposed to have started a happy married life. Life with my husband was going very well. Since we both worked at the same company, it was easy to coordinate schedules, and we managed to share household chores efficiently. We went on trips to distant places on dates. I think it was good to marry him. Except for one thing. That is, his parents. When I went to greet them before the marriage, they were very kind and seemed like nice in-laws. I thought we could build a good relationship with them. But once the lid was opened, they turned out to be terrible people. It was sometime after we got married. On a day when my husband and I coincidentally had a day off together, we planned to relax at home. Doorbell rings. Who could that be? There were no visitors scheduled for the day, nor were there any packages to be delivered. So I wondered who it could be. Then my husband said, "I'll get it." He went to the entrance as if he knew who it was. Oh, this apartment is quite spacious. But there are many steps. It's hard because my legs are bad. Oh dear, Kim, you're so sloppy wearing a tracksuit on your day off. Don't show my son such an embarrassing sight. The people who came into the living room with my husband were his parents. They sat down on the sofa without saying anything. As you can see, my in-laws are the worst, making sarcastic remarks and acting as if they deserve to be respected. My father-in-law doesn't directly harm me, but he goes along with my mother-in-law. Why did you invite them on our day off? We were supposed to relax together today. I'm sorry. Mom and Dad insisted, and I couldn't refuse. That's fine, but why didn't you tell me? I had been harassed by my mother-in-law many times before. I had consulted with my husband about it, so he knew that I wasn't getting along well with my in-laws. However, since he is an only child and feels he must be filial, he hasn't cautioned them. Really, can't modern brides even serve a cup of coffee? While my husband and I were whispering to each other, my mother-in-law loudly and indirectly demanded coffee. Despite our confusion at their sudden visit, they are shameless people. Sorry, I'll get it ready right away. Normally, you should have this prepared before we arrive. Ignoring my mother-in-law's sarcasm, I hurriedly started preparing the coffee in the kitchen. My in-laws ended up staying at my house until the evening. As a result, I had to prepare lunch for them too. My day off was completely ruined, but this isn't the only unpleasant episode with my in-laws. It happened one day. Hey, Kim. What? Mom is planning to have a party this weekend with neighbors and relatives. And she wants us to come too. Honestly, I didn't want to go. I knew I would be made to help out and be overworked. But I also knew that if I didn't go, I would hear sarcastic remarks later. So, I decided it was better to help than to be criticized and reluctantly agreed to participate. I thought my husband should have declined it, but I didn't say anything since it would be pointless. Then, on the party day, we were called earlier than the start time. Excuse us for interrupting. You're late. It's common sense to arrive 20 minutes early. Come on, Mom, we were held up by traffic. Give us a break. Oh well, that's fine. Paul, you take it easy. Kim, hurry up and get started. My mother-in-law is sweet to my husband but very harsh to me, which infuriates me. As I expected, I had to prepare all the snacks for the tea party by hand. I could make them since I usually cook. But the number she demanded was ridiculously high, so it took a long time. During this time, my mother-in-law did nothing but watch TV. Mother, I've finished making the snacks. Really, Kim, you're useless. What? It took you too long just to make some snacks. She made such sarcastic remarks even though she had never made snacks herself. It was quite fast considering the number she requested, but I received no thanks. She intentionally increased the number to harass me, which was very malicious. Meanwhile, my husband and father-in-law were preparing cushions and chairs for the guests, but did not help me at all. I was subjected to sarcastic comments while preparing, but I ignored them because I couldn't bear to take them to heart. Then the party started. My mother-in-law's friends and relatives gathered. For me, this time was hellish. When guests complimented the snacks, my mother-in-law bragged, "I made them." I wasn't sure, but I'm glad you like them, despite not helping at all. When relatives talked about their daughters-in-law, she said, "Your daughter-in-law is nice. Mine is terrible, she treats me like a slave," which was completely untrue. It was a very uncomfortable time for me. After the party ended, I was naturally made to clean up and was told, "While you're at it, clean the room too." I was treated like a maid. Holding back tears, I thought, I will never go if she invites me again while cleaning. However, reality was not so kind. That hellish party turned out to be very popular with others and became a regular event. Especially, there were many compliments about the delicious snacks. Kim, we're having another party next weekend, so I'm counting on you. What? Wait, please. I have work that day. I just take the day off. Do you intend to embarrass me? If you don't come, I'll make sure you and my son get divorced. My mother-in-law suddenly called me and demanded I attend the party. And she was relentless even when I said I had work. At that time, I didn't dare to defy my mother-in-law. And I was anxious and scared that I might be forced to divorce my husband. So I reluctantly took time off work to comply with her demands. As a result, I worked like a horse at tea parties. And I started taking time off work frequently to assist with them, making me feel isolated at my workplace. My mental state had long surpassed its limits. When I talked to my husband about it, he just said, "Well, my mom doesn't mean any harm, just overlook it." He was no help at all. Eventually, I found myself constantly thinking about how to escape this painful life. The answer I came to was, let's get divorced. What? It was to divorce my husband. I struggled a lot with the decision to divorce. Although I had lost trust in my husband for not helping me, I still loved him. However, I didn't want to continue living a life tormented by my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law. If we divorced, my husband and I would become practically strangers. So I wouldn't need to deal with my in-laws anymore. The issue was whether my husband would agree to the divorce. I don't want that. I don't want to get divorced. What happened all of a sudden? I just can't stand being involved with your mother anymore. You know what our relationship is like, right? I know, but divorce just because of that. I love you, Kim, and I want to be with you forever. I feel the same way. But I can't bear it anymore. So, let's get divorced formally and live separately. But keep in touch and continue our relationship. How about that? When I suggested this, my husband reluctantly agreed. This is how we ended up divorcing due to my mother-in-law's malicious behavior and actions. Life after the divorce was truly comfortable. The fact that I filed the divorce papers seemed to give me a push. I changed my phone model and number, so I no longer received those bothersome calls from my mother-in-law. I moved out of the apartment where my husband still lives and rented a place in another building, so my in-laws couldn't suddenly visit me anymore. Although I was leading a comfortable life without dealing with my in-laws, something was still missing. It was the marital life with my husband. Despite the divorce, we still loved each other, and I wasn't satisfied living separately. So, I came up with a plan. It was risky and could result in significant losses, but I decided to give it a try. As a preliminary step to my plan, I threw myself into my work like never before. Before the divorce, I often had to take time off due to those hellish parties. But after explaining the situation to my colleagues, I regained their trust by focusing on my work. And finally, I've saved it up. I had managed to save $500,000. Saving money has been a hobby of mine since university, and my dream was to buy my own home with my savings. Finally, the savings I had been accumulating since my student days reached $500,000. With this amount, I could buy a decent house. I immediately contacted my husband to discuss buying a home. A home. But buying a house costs a lot of money. How will you manage that? Don't worry about that. I've saved up enough. How about we go see some model homes on our next day off? Thus, we decided to visit model homes. My husband was surprised that I had saved up so much money but was very grateful and said, "Thank you for working so hard." I felt glad that I had put so much effort into saving. Right, don't tell your parents about buying the house yet. I'll let them know when the time comes. Got it. If we tell them now, who knows what they'll do. So, while confirming our feelings of reconciliation, we steadily proceeded with the preparations for our dream home. After a while, my husband and I visited various model rooms, imagining our future home. It would be helpful to have a power outlet here. I like this kitchen layout. And, I want a kitchen that opens up to the living room, we discussed. Planning a home with many personal touches. Considering the future possibility of children, we also took that into account. Finally, the blueprint was completed, and construction began. We managed to keep the costs within $500,000 after consulting with the construction company. Our house is going to be built here. It's exciting. So, have you made up your mind about the strategy one mentioned before? To live happily in our new home, it was necessary to avoid interference from my in-laws. I had told my husband that he either needed to convince his parents to stay away or cut ties with them. Sorry, I still haven't made up my mind. Being an only child. I understand Mom did terrible things to you, Kim, but I owe them for raising me. And I'm worried about what would happen to them if I left. I couldn't forgive his parents, but I understood my husband's feelings. Well, it's up to you, Paul. The house is in my name, and we're divorced. So you don't have to force yourself to come here, I told him. What decision he would make was left to him. We parted ways that day. In the meantime, as the house was being built, I continued working hard and slowly prepared for the move. Regardless of the choice my husband made, I was ready to plunge my in-laws into hell. Either way, my strategy seemed likely to work. One day, after work, I was making moving preparations when my phone rang with a message. It was from my husband. Not bad. Seeing the message from my husband, I smiled slyly. It seemed like the best possible future was within reach. Eventually, our dream home was completed. It turned out exactly as we had hoped because of our attention to detail. Seeing the finished home, I realized the magnitude of our purchase. But just having the house wasn't enough. The real battle was just beginning. Since I had been preparing to move even before the house was completed, I had all my belongings smoothly transported to the new home by a moving company. After the move, I visited the apartment where I used to live, now solely inhabited by my husband. Sitting at the dining table in the living room, I heard the sound of the front door opening. The day had finally arrived. My husband had brought his parents. It's been a while since we visited. Why haven't you invited us until now? Young people nowadays have no sense of manners. As usual, my in-laws came into the living room complaining. As soon as they entered and saw me, they were surprised. Kim? We heard you were on a long business trip, but you're back. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I'm sorry, Mother. I just got back yesterday and was too busy to contact you. Of course, I hadn't been on any long business trips. I had lied to my in-laws about this day. Well, that's all right. More importantly, you bought a house, didn't you? And you spent quite a lot on it. It seems quite spacious, so we'll live with you. As expected, my mother-in-law was interested in the fact that we bought a house. She said she would live with us, obviously intending to exploit me as usual. Indeed, it would be more reassuring for us to live together. That's why you built the house, right? I almost burst out laughing at my father-in-law's statement, but managed to hold it in. My husband was silently observing the situation. Could you please sit down for a moment? I have some detailed things to discuss about the new house. As they sat down, I served them coffee. Oh, you're being unusually considerate, she commented as she took a sip of the coffee I had offered. This polite hospitality was going to be the last time. So, about the new house we bought. Yes. You bought it for us, right? I'm looking forward to living with you and Paul. What? I'm single, though. What? I hadn't told my in-laws that we were divorced. To escape my mother-in-law's unreasonable demands, I lied that I was on a long business trip. What do you mean single? You're married to Paul. What nonsense are you talking? Are you making fun of old people? When I revealed the fact that I was single, my in-laws turned red with anger and started yelling. I mean exactly what I said. Paul and I are divorced, so I'm single. The new house is in my name, so you can't live there. I have the right to decide who lives in my new house. Divorced? I haven't heard anything about that. I thought it was strange when you suddenly said you were on a long business trip. You lied to us. You've embarrassed me. How dare you do whatever you want just because you married into this family? Take responsibility. So you betrayed not only us but also Paul. What a person. Divorce was the right decision. When I firmly said they couldn't live there, my in-laws bombarded me with sarcasm and complaints. Then, my husband finally snapped. Enough is enough. Just listening to you say whatever you want to Kim. Be reasonable. Surprised by their own son's outburst, my in-laws were speechless. The very reason we ended up divorcing is because of you too. How can you say such terrible things? I was thinking about Kim. Thinking about Kim? You've been nothing but sarcastic and complaining to her. Forcing her to attend those ridiculous tea parties and using her like a slave. How is any of that considering Kim? Kim is not your convenient maid, she's my precious wife. Because of you two, our life together was ruined. Stop interfering in our relationship. Paul. On the day I was preparing to move, I received a message from my husband. I'm sorry for everything. I've decided to cut ties with my parents. I had thought he didn't love me because he never helped me before. But I almost cried hearing his true feelings now. I'm an only child, and I thought my parents would struggle without me. And I owe them for raising me, so I never said anything. But I've reached my limit. I'm cutting ties with them. Don't come near me and Kim ever again. How can you say that? Is that how you treat your parents? People who hurt my important wife don't deserve to call themselves parents. With that, my husband made his stance clear. Please don't say that. I'll try to have a better relationship with Kim from now on, okay? I didn't trust her words at all. After hearing Paul's words, you can still say that? Well, do you want to hear this too? I opened the voice memo on my smartphone and played certain recordings. They were of my mother-in-law's numerous sarcastic comments towards me over the years. There were a few recordings of my father-in-law as well. Hearing this, my in-laws' faces turned pale. If you try to approach us in the future, I will take this to a lawyer. So, please leave now. By the way, this apartment is already cancelled. So it's useless to suddenly show up here again. With that, my in-laws trudged out. This marked the end of my long struggle with them. After that, my husband started preparing to move and join me in our new home. As for my in-laws, they became the subject of gossip among the neighbors and relatives. I wondered who had leaked the information, but it turned out to be my husband. He had told the participants of the parties and others about what had happened to ensure my in-laws wouldn't act up again. I hadn't thought that far ahead, so I almost wanted to applaud him for his smart move. As for me, I remarried Paul and resubmitted our marriage registration, happily returning to being a married couple. My planned strategy worked out just as I had hoped. We are now comfortably living in our dream home. It was a risky and expensive purchase, but I'm truly glad we made it. And then... No way. What's wrong? Look at this. What? This is... I had discovered that I was pregnant. A future where 3 of us would live in this house wasn't far off. I'm expecting challenging times ahead, but taking my in-laws as a lesson. I want to strive to be a good parent to the child in my womb.